Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first edition of the Moving Minds Alliance Member Showcase. The MMA Member Showcase is a platform for members to share learning, innovation, and opportunities to collaborate on their ECEDie in emergencies programs. This meeting is being recorded, like we said, and the video will be uploaded on MMA YouTube channel. This edition features the Global Schools Forum, and we will learn about the evidence hub they are building. In a minute, I will invite Priyanka, Global Schools Forum Evidence Hub Manager, for our presentation. But before then, I would like to engage us or implore us to ask questions during the Q&A segment. And you can do that by using the raise hand button or the Q&A feature on your Zoom. At this point, I would like to invite Priyanka for our presentation. Priyanka, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lola. Really excited to be here. I'll just quickly share my screen. Just give me a second. Awesome. Can you see this? Amazing. Awesome. Hi, everyone. My name is Priyanka. I'm from the Global Schools Forum. I'm the Evidence Hub Manager. I also have my colleague Kavita on the call with me today. She's one of the directors at GSF. For those of you who don't know GSF, just a quick background, since you're also one of the newer members of MMA. The Global Schools Forum is a collaborative community of non-state actors working in education in low and middle income countries. Currently, we have about 132 organizations working across 60 countries that are a part of our network. We run various sort of projects within GSF, but the project that I'm going to specifically talk about today is the ECEDiE Evidence Hub for Emergencies. Just to give you some context of what the hub essentially is, this is primarily targeting RLOs, CBOs, and other frontline practitioners, and is essentially giving them tools and resources that can help them in programming of the ECEDiE solutions that they are developing for the various contexts that they're working in. The hub is primarily trying to bridge two big gaps. One is just the shortage of evidence on local models, specifically from the perspective of sustainability and scalability. And as emergencies are becoming more frequent and more larger in sizes, we believe this codification of local models is essential. And the second piece is around just the lack of user-friendly and practice-oriented tools, specifically from the perspective of the last-mile practitioner. So just this focus on sort of strengthening practice and building tools and resources for sort of that last-mile practitioner is essentially the larger sort of focus of this hub. We have a growing sort of community of ECEDiE practitioners within GSF. We have about 40% of our network members that are specifically working in teams of ECEDiE, and within that now we have an emerging community that's focusing specifically on sort of displacement, refugee, and emergency contexts. Just a little bit about the broader focus of the hub. So the hub right now, along with other things, is specifically looking at building evidence on sort of dual generational models. So what we have seen so far as part of our initial needs assessment and just talking to various practitioners is that there are programming models that are either sort of catering to children or programming models that are catering to caregivers. But there's research to say that the well-being of a child is interlinked deeply with well-being of a caregiver. So what we are really sort of advocating for and building more evidence on are models that are really speaking to each other at a family level. And that's essentially kind of one of the larger focuses of the Evidence Hub, is to really build evidence on these dual generational models, as we believe they have larger potential for impact than models that either only look at children or only look at caregivers. Within that, we've been studying and codifying various different sort of dual generational models. I've listed a few on the slide for you, but just kind of one of the points that I wanted to highlight here is that while for children, we are looking at more childcare ECEDiE focused solutions, depending on where they are and which age group they're catering to. But for caregivers, we are sort of moving a little bit beyond just parenting, training and support, but we're essentially also looking at livelihood programming models that can really support caregivers, both primary and secondary caregivers, with improving their income generation ability, which then sort of puts them at a better place to be able to afford childcare, for example, which then sort of supports the child in the long term. So we're really trying to study the interconnection between the child and the caregiver and the impact that it creates at a family level. So this is essentially one of the key sort of like focuses of the hub right now. And we're typically like studying these models for refugee context, but again, in sort of more protracted crisis context right now. Just sort of moving forward, there are 4 sort of like pieces of work that are right now as a part of the Evidence Hub. One is that we're running a communities of practice on various ECEDIE themes, including sort of dual gen approaches. The idea of these communities of practice is really to bring together practitioners, sector experts, researchers, to really exchange learning, share best practices, share lessons of what is working, what's really not working, when they are implementing various EIE solutions in their own context, but also largely to create a space for networking and just creating a community of peer support, where organizations can really just tap into each other's expertise as needed. So we've been running a couple of communities of practice session. We've recently completed one COP series, which was on just looking at these various dual generational models. But we're also sort of right now in the works of launching a second COP, which is specifically going to look at childcare models, and within that, really going to look at strengthening operational and financial capability and planning for running these childcare centers in a profitable way in a refugee context. So that's one of the big pieces of work that we do. The second piece is around just curating practical sort of handouts and building databases. This is really just systematizing existing research and knowledge that exists in this area, and really making it more sort of practitioner oriented and practitioner friendly. We've built a couple of handouts, but we've also built sort of some editable databases where we have put together various resources that have been implemented and tried by other practitioners. So that's sort of like the second piece of our work. The third piece of our work is around sort of pilot and research, where we work with practitioners and we work with researchers to build new tools and resources on sort of identified gap areas. So just to give you an example, we are currently working with one of GSF's member called this organization called Children in Crossfire that is working in Ethiopia in the Oromia region. So they very recently started building a dual generation programming model, but because there's such less evidence and such less tools and resources to kind of rely on to really build this program, it was really difficult to really think through what does this TOC really need to look like, or what does the MEL framework needs to look like for a dual generational program. So we partnered with Busara, which is a research organization that also works in sort of behavioral sciences, to work with Children in Crossfire and to really, through a series of workshops and on-ground pilot, really sort of try and call out what this TOC and MEL framework indicators and tools need to look like for a dual generational program. As we are doing a lot of the testing on the ground, we are also sort of codifying a lot of these learnings in the form of a toolkit, which is then going to be made available as a global public good for the larger practitioner community who's interested in sort of implementing dual generational programs in sort of their specific context. So that's kind of like the third piece of like work that we do. And the fourth piece is essentially around running events and webinars. So we invite sector experts to share and engage with our community and share existing or newer research that's coming up in this field. We also partner with our community members to present at key events and conferences, to advocate for learnings that we are generating from the ground in sort of some of these global spaces, and really influence practitioner sort of voice in some of these learning spaces. So just broadly, these are the 4 big pieces of work that we undertake. This is just kind of to give you a sense of sort of what's coming up. we have a couple of exciting things in the pipeline in this quarter. So we have two sort of knowledge products that are going to get launched. So one is this MEL toolkit that I talked about with Children in Crossfire and Busara that we're building. And the second is this learning report that we are developing based on some of the insights that were derived from the first communities of practice that we ran on the dual gen model. So those are the two sort of knowledge products which are in line. And as they come out, we'd love to kind of maybe come back and present it to the MMA community, but also invite you to some of the launch events that we are planning. The second piece is this learning series that I was mentioning about extending sort of our communities of practice. So the second learning series, this one particularly is going to focus on childcare providers, specifically the childcare services that are offered by RLOs or CBOs and other local actors, but really working with them on strengthening their financial and operational capacity for running some of these childcare centers in a profitable and sustainable way. So that's the learning series that's currently in the pipeline. And then GSF is going to be at Anga. We are co-organizing a networking event with some of our partners, including Cambridge Education, EdTech Hub, etc. And this is going to be on Sunday, 22nd of September. I'm not going to be there, but Kavita is there. And there's the link, the QR code has the details for the session. So if you're around, we'd love for you to sign up. There are still a few slots open, I believe. Yeah, but if you're able to join us, it'll be great to catch up with you in person. So that's just a little bit on sort of what's in the pipeline. And that brings me to my last slide, which is on sort of collaboration. There, I put down some ideas. They're probably like a little bit like more immediate and short term, but would love to see if anyone else has like other ideas for collaboration. We're very, very happy to get on a call and talk and figure out other ways to collaborate as well. But just to kind of get us started, if you're a practitioner yourself and you'd like to join our communities of practice, please just reach out. Or if you know of other practitioners from your network who you think may benefit from engaging and joining our learning community, please do reach out to us. If there are events or webinars that you would like to host, if there are knowledge products, research that you have generated as part of your work that you think our community will benefit hearing about, please do let us know, and we'd love to kind of co-organize a learning session with you. And third is just to see if there are opportunities to jointly conduct any research, either on any of like the ECEDiE themes that I captured in today's presentation, but also other ideas that you might have. Specifically, I wanted to call out about the MEL toolkit as it's kind of, we're launching a version of it. We are very keen to pilot this in different emergency contexts, recognizing that each sort of like emergency context is different. So if this is something that you think might be of interest to you, if you'd like to pick it up and implement it in your context, we'd love to see if we can come in and support and do a joint pilot with you. So please reach out if that's of interest. And just sort of like last point before I open up for Q&A, I've talked a lot about our work in sort of like the displacement context, but there's also a lot of work that we're trying to expand to within sort of climate, recognizing sort of the interconnections between displacement and climate emergencies and how it's exacerbating the situation in both of these contexts. So if that's something that you're keen to talk further about or collaborate on, we'd love to kind of speak with you and see if there are opportunities to take that forward. We've done some initial sort of like discussions with our community members and initial very small scale dipstick to really understand where the need is. Yeah, so there are some sort of ideas that we have on what we can do in that space. But again, very, very early to do a presentation on that. But if there are opportunities for us to collaborate there, we'd love to get in touch. I don't know if I'm on time, but I think we should have about 12 minutes or so for Q&A. I couldn't see the chat, so I don't know if there are any questions. I'll stop sharing my screen, but I'll pass it on to Lola in the interim.
Thank you so much, Kavita, and Priyanka for putting this presentation together, because I know it must have been a joint work. And thanks for sharing the insight with us, Priyanka. I would like to open the floor now for questions and answer. Anyone on the call, do you have a question? Or Priyanka, would you like to also just, I know you were trying to meet up to time, and so probably you breezed through the final 3 areas of collaboration. So maybe we can reiterate again the final, the second to the last slide, where on how members can collaborate with GSF. That would be great. But the Q&A is open. Please, anyone can, if you have questions, please feel free to drop it there. Thank you.
I have dropped a question in the Q&A, but I'll wait for Priyanka to reiterate the opportunities for collaboration, and then I'm happy to, yeah, we can come to that question afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 3 opportunities that are listed down. One is on the communities of practice. We're running a communities of practice on dual gen themes. So if that's something that's of interest to any practitioner or anyone that you know in your network who might be interested to join in, we'd love for you to reach out. The second is around doing any sort of events or webinars together. So if there are interesting pieces of research that you may have worked on that you think the community could benefit from, or any tools that you have created or products or any work that you've done sort of in this field that you think the larger community would benefit learning from, we'd love to kind of see if there are opportunities to co-organize an online webinar or a learning session with our community members. And the third was around doing joint research pilots. So there are a couple of areas that we have in mind, which is either around just sort of extending the MEL pilot that we're doing with Children in Crossfire in other emergency contexts, or if there are other ideas that you have on conjointly conducting sort of research, we'd love to see if we can work together with you on that. Yeah, and I think there was a small note around just also seeing if there are anyone interested in sort of working on climate emergencies. We've very recently started our work in that area. But if there are others who've sort of like done more work and have ideas on how we can partner together, given sort of the vantage point of GSF and the learning community and network that we have, I think it'll be an exciting space to take this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Priyanka. I see Maya, your hand up, and I also see the question by Tricia in the chat box. So I'm going to read Tricia's question. One of the challenges that I have encountered when working with local partners or smaller organizations which have a robust evidence base about the effectiveness of culturally relevant sustainable models is the fact that they often do not have the infrastructure to support scaling and are thus dependent on government ministries or UNICEF or larger INGO to adopt the model and scale. How is GSF approaching this challenge?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great question, and this is something that we talk about pretty much every day. And I think the idea of also focusing the work of the hub on the dual generational models and specifically within that focusing
Priyanka,
on us from the perspective of
breaking up. Sorry, I don't know if that's just me, but you're breaking up. Do you want to just repeat what you said, please?
Sorry, my internet seems unstable. 1 second.
It's better now, so go ahead. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, no, I was saying I think this is something that we also grapple with pretty much every day. And that sort of led us to make a strategic decision on focusing more on these dual generational models, because the focus of these sort of like models is improving livelihood generation opportunities for caregivers, so that they're better positioned to access some of the ECEDIE and childcare services for their children without necessarily relying heavily on external aid, and even also working directly with ECEDIE providers and really sort of giving them the capacity support that they need to run their care centers in a more profitable and sustainable way, so they don't the external aid to really scale. So the idea really is, I mean, there are still a lot of gaps in terms of bringing this to life, because sometimes the regulation is not really aligned to scaling some of these systems, or there aren't enough policies for refugee families to work in certain contexts. So it's really hard to kind of push for a lot of these models. But the idea of running some of these projects and activities is really to understand where these gaps are, and then where can we come in and advocate, and how are even different sort of like organizations responding at a community level to some of these challenges. A lot of them are in fact also building like really very, very low cost models, so they don't have to rely on external aid, whether it is sort of defining what that minimum package of play really looks like to really bring down costs, or diversifying the services that they can offer in their ECEDiE programs to earn income. So there are different things that different organizations are trying to really sort of like make their program sustainable. But again, I think there's a long way to go. Yeah, but I think the question is definitely very, very
valid. Thank you.
critical and important to ask, and it's something that we deal with every day. And yeah, hopefully through the hub, we're able to build more evidence on models that are more self-sustainable and more locally led.
Thank you, Priyanka. Trisha, I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, it opened up a whole host more, but we don't have time. I'll revert, and I'm sure we can continue the conversation. But thank you. That was very thoughtful.
All right, thank you. Maya, over to you. We'll take your question. You're muted.
Sorry, my phone screen is too small. This is really interesting. Thank you so much, Priyanka. Regarding collaboration and the research, if you are actively looking for organizations who want to collaborate, contribute, I invite you, if you want to ever send over an article, if you want to draft an article explaining what it is you're doing and what the opportunities for collaboration are. And I'm happy to include it in our newsletter that goes out to all our members, and that could open up new channels, but only if you're really actively, not to add any more work to your plate, but super interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya.
Thanks, Maya.
Yeah.
We'll keep in touch.
Noor, your question.
Yeah, thank you, Priyanka. That was really great. So I know that you and Kavita are already part of the different working groups, but as you might know that the donor working group are looking to do a global nutrition dialogue on nutrition for growth. And I was thinking, like, seeing your work across like the community groups, and then you're doing a lot of like webinars and events and being connected to a lot of CBOs and RLOs. I was wondering first if you have partners who are CBOs and RLOs who are working on the cross-cutting between nutrition and ECEDiE, or nutrition and early learning. And the second question was if you would be interested in co-hosting a global dialogue with MMA and through the donor working group and others to do that and bring in those actors with us into this dialogue. If that makes sense. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm off camera. My internet is glitching, but yeah, would love to see the opportunities to host a global dialogue together. I think, yeah, we can discuss more about that maybe offline, but definitely sounds super interesting. And we are connected with a lot of RLOs and CBOs, and all of them, I think, to a large extent have to do nutrition work, given that a lot of children don't really sometimes get access to nutritional food at home for various reasons. Yeah, so I think that's definitely a key piece of work people undertake. We've not done a lot of sort of inquiry in like the health work that they undertake, but we know as part of the various services that they offer to families, this is one of them. But we can definitely look more into that. We've not done that kind of research right now, but I know there's inclusion of that in their programs.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka. I was going to ask Kavita, do you have any final words before we wrap up for today?
Oh gosh, no, I'm letting Priyanka talk because she's the one that does all of this work. So no, I think I think just to Trisha's earlier point, I think there's definitely a big case to be made for supporting RLOs. And I think scale looks very different in these contexts, because typically when you're talking to education funders, they are thinking about, you know, scale as in scaling through governments or scaling to thousands of schools and centers, which doesn't make sense. So I think what Priyanka was saying in terms of building more sustainable models is probably more relevant, but would love to chat, especially as, you know, you're in Anga and you're talking to policymakers, would love to hear what they're saying, but would love to do kind of a policy brief or something about either scale and sustainability in this sector. So I think that's just my final piece. I think we're very, very early in this work. There's significant lack of capacity within these RLOs, both financially and in terms of people. They need better funding. They need better social networks through which they can communicate. So I think whatever kind of bridging we can do, we'd love to think about. But that's just, I think, my final point. All to say, I mean, the more we dig, obviously, the more challenges we're coming up on. So how do we sort that in a more holistic way? But I also see Sarah having her hand up, so happy to have her question.
Sarah?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I put it in the Q&A, but maybe it didn't pop up. It's just a general question about the hub itself. Is it a digital space? Is it a platform? Is it live? Because I know on the website I've seen, like when I was looking up, you know, the work that Global School Forum does. I was just interested to know whether this is like an accessible platform, or is it going to be closed to your partners and the membership? I'm just curious about that.
That's a great question, and I'll take it. Well, because Priyanka and I literally just talked about it. We're going through a massive website refresh. But ultimately, so one, it's open source. Nothing is just for the GSF members, especially in this piece of work. At the moment, it's all of the resources that Priyanka is referring to are within our resources page, but we are moving to our resources page being restructured so that when you come on it, you can click on ECEDIE Evidence Hub and it'll take you there. But it's going to take a couple of months. So we're going to have to do an interim kind of resource hub, but eventually it will be kind of collated, accessible to anyone that wants it.
That's great. Yeah, great. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing that we're quite keen on thinking about, which is cross-promoting. So if there's a link on the MMA website, for example, to our resource hub and vice versa, we just don't want to be replicating work that other people are doing, and we'd like to spread this as much as we can. So if there's ways for us to cross-promote some of these tools, we would love that.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think it's brilliant. And of course, you know, the more the better, as when it comes to, I really love the fact that it's practitioner kind of run. I love the idea of this toolkit that you're planning to put together. I'm also very deeply interested in what you call this, the dual generational programming, because it would be interesting to see how. Obviously, I'm an evaluation MERLA person, so for me, it is going to be really valuable to understand how outcomes and impacts and evidence is being not just recorded, but what is the lens that you're going to be using? How is that practical in a variety of different contexts? I know that, you know, so I think I'm just keenly interested. So it would be just great to just understand, because from the MMA standpoint, and when we're looking at you know, generating evidence and understanding of impact at a global scale, and you can't have global impact without having local impact. I just want to see how we could potentially kind of connect the dots with it. So I'm just very interested in that, and I think it would be. I know that we're involved in, like, I'll be seeing you in the working groups, but it would be really interesting to have a conversation about how you're planning to bring all of that together and how it potentially could be elevated to a higher level in terms of tracking the indicators from the local to the global in some way, and bring it to that kind of scale and stage eventually.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Kavita and Priyanka, for sharing your insights with us. We'll wrap up in a bit, and I would like to invite Tricia to close the conversation for today. And hopefully we'll convene again in October when another member will be showcasing their ECEDiE innovations. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank Priyanka and Kavita for their very interesting contribution today. I would love to explore the possibility of the Moving Minds Alliance collaborating with you on a policy brief to educate donors, because I think the issue of scaling is often a block to these conversations, despite increased growing global commitment to investing in locally led action. The funding mechanisms don't always align with the commitments. So educating donors about what's needed in order to sort of advance in this way, I think is something that we could very usefully collaborate on. So I look forward to continuing these conversations. Thank you for opening our Member Showcase webinar series. You've set the bar very high, and I look forward to continuing to collaborate through the working groups and hopefully to seeing you in New York. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.